Good afternoon to you, our dear viewers. Welcome to yet another episode of the Youth Roundtable here on Civic Space TV. With me today, your host for the day, Okot Olaa. Today we are discussing yet again pertinent issues that affect our collective future as youth of Uganda. And this week, of course, one of the hot affairs, the discussion around a speech made somewhere in a district called Luweero in the north central part of Uganda, of the central region of Uganda. We will be delving deeper into that. But at a higher level, as we always try to do in this conversation, we are discussing political parties. Are they a force of unity or disunity? You're most welcome to this discussion. We shall be delving into this discussion around political parties, but with me is a very, very capable panel, capable of dissecting these issues, and I hope that you follow along, but also be able to learn something and thereafter share with fellow youth as we look forward to building a Uganda that works for all of us. With me today, starting from the far right, not in terms of political
inclination,
but in terms of sitting position, is Mr. Rugumayo, who is currently serving as the Deputy Prime Minister at Victoria University. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. I am very privileged to be hosted yet again on this show, and I hope I can make my noble contribution to this conversation.
You're most welcome. Next to him, sitting in an odd position, is Mr. Kidega Moses, who is the Secretary for Labour Affairs at the National Youth Council, a national youth leader at that. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Sam, my young brother, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm privileged to share a panel with distinguished young people of very great standing. You know, Kateregga Julius and Rugumayo and my sister here, Winnie, and of course yourself, our host. So I am more than humbled to be here, and just like Roy, I look forward to making my humble contribution to this conversation.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. And next to him, we have the lady in the room, Comrade Winnie Akidi Adile, a youth advocate and also, at We Talk series, Uganda. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Winnie Akidi Adile, and I'm a team leader at We Talk series, Uganda.
Yeah.
It's an honor being here to share the voices of young people.
All right. You will tell us more about We Talk series as we go along. And of course, the Mr. and Honorable Kateregga Julius, who is the Lord, emphasis on Lord, Lord Councilor of Kawempe. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Sam. And good afternoon to the viewers. It's an honor for me to be seated here to dissect national issues with this wonderful panel.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much. And at that, I would like to start, of course, this discussion with you. But first of all, giving context, we do have a country that has different political parties. I think by definition, the political party is a civil formation with the aim of taking power. And that can be contrasted with pressure groups that normally just stand to push. Uganda has a history of over 70, 80 years of political parties, starting with, of course, Ignatius Kangave Musazi starting the UNC. We see it evolving into UPC. We see the parties around independence, including the Democratic Party, which built many of us young leaders through UID. We see Kabaka Yeka Party. Then they were abolished, of course, in 1966, 67. And then the reformation through the National Resistance Army that later became the National Resistance Movement. And the referendum in 2005. And finally, a wave of parties largely opposing the long-staying National Resistance Movement regime. And of course, that was the Forum for Democratic Change for about 4 elections. And currently, that space has been dominated by the National Unity Platform, which my brother Kateregga subscribes to, but also is a coordinator for institutions. Bringing that context at a wider level, because I didn't want us to zero down on just a speech. This country is bigger than any personality. But last week, of course, many of us were very happy to see the National Unity Platform being able to mobilize around the country without any interruption by the police. However, that joy was quickly changed at the point when the should I say the convoy reached Luweero, and statements were made. Um, I think you're in the best position to clarify on what those statements were, but the there were statements alluding towards issues around the Buganda question, issues around land, issues around economic pressures on the Baganda people. The matter in which they were stated could be politically reasoned, but we would like to listen from you as a better authority on this panel, also to guide the discussion. What happened in Luweero? What was the implication from your leader, Mr. Chagulani?
Thank you very much, Ola, and to the viewers. To every country is unique in nature. So when you move from here and move to the gate of Parliament, before entering the Parliament, there is a display on at the gate expressing the original, the indigenous communities, nations that were collapsed to form a country called Uganda. And that is the reality of this nation. When I look at this panel, we partly that geography is represented. Some of the challenges that this nation faces is as we struggle to structure and evolve into Ugandans, is that we've not put to bed some of the challenges that were meant to be addressed at the formation of a country called Uganda, or what was supposed to evolve into a nation called Uganda. It has been caused by a number of factors. Strongest amongst the institutions that were collapsed into Uganda was the Uganda Kingdom. I think on this panel, I am the person born and raised here, with, of course, with roots from other regions of this country. What stands out is that Ugandans have been dishonest to themselves. Last week when we were here, I told you that when we were moving in different sub-regions, or when our principal was moving into some different sub-regions, it was trying to package a message for people of those very different regions. When he came to Uganda, it's a fact, that's where he comes from. He comes from Mbogo clan. Whatever he said and whatever he did, and whichever expressions he used could be better received and understood. Maybe I understood them from where I stood as a young youth, as a young person. Here, when he talked about, how people went, particularly in Luweero, how the people of Luweero welcomed General Museveni from wherever he came from. He could have started his war, say, from the western part of Uganda, or from Kasese, where he had a member of parliament at that time in Chiyonga. But he chose Luweero, which was a stronghold. It was an opposition stronghold for Obote at that time. He started the struggle there. The people fed him, fed his people, and Bobi Wine called out on the dishonesty and the abuses that the people of Luweero, who come from his indigenous community, begin to receive. Every time a person comes out and says this, he quoted the president. He quoted General Museveni in one of the in one of his speeches, where he tried to mimic the people of Central Region, using funny statements, Fenga Baganda, that every time Baganda, the communities, I have seen people or communities organize around their leaders. We are lucky to have a cultural leader who is largely, may not be empowered, but who people believe in. So our community usually rallies around him. I have seen, not to offend, but the people of northern Uganda, since last year, I've seen the Chief Justice of this country take an active role into encouraging and, inviting young people from his particular sub-region to remind them. So this country has refused to keeps shying away from addressing the identity question of the people, moving into the general space, feeding into what is supposed to be a nation. My grandfather often emphasized to us wherever we went to him for holidays, our duty as young, as a very young person at that time, what would be expected of me from a cultural perspective, emphasizing then his role, and that is what we grew up understanding. I do not remember a teacher in primary school or our parents, at that many of us, telling us what our duty is to a nation, Uganda. But in all of us, our parents continue to emphasize, you come from this region, this is expected of you. You come from this kingdom, this is expected of you. Unfortunately, that is how our nation has been built. There has not been deliberate efforts to build unity and define what defines Ugandans. So we continue to struggle. Nevertheless, so when Bobi Wine moves to Luweero, he calls out on, economic isolation, what the people of Luweero feel the regime has done to them. The people of Buganda and Luweero are largely farmers. We've, when you read the Lord Monster report, they say since 1904, the people of Buganda moved from subsistence farming, keeping animals, then they had moved into largely growing coffee. Partly, these are realities. The legislative agenda, when you look at what this government has done, they have tried to cripple these people by taxing, coffee and whatever, and then they are creating, for example, we have three cattle corridors in this country, and these are our realities. When you move into the cattle corridors, the government of Uganda, through legislation, went and declared tax-free dairy products. That is obviously giving an advantage to people, and of people who come from these areas, but particularly focusing on one corridor, ignoring the Karamoja and the Teso corridors, and then focusing on the corridor of Buganda, cattle corridor of Buganda, and down south. So these are realities, but Ugandans have been shying away from talking to themselves about these realities.
Can you also discuss the issue around land, that in that same vein, because there was something about the Bagandan land?
Yes, he spoke about people that have grabbed the land of Baganda and the land in Buganda generally. A good example is General Museveni. It is a reality that General Museveni grabbed the Chisozi farm from Makerere University. It was a public land belonging to an institution, Makerere University. He grabbed it. It is now his personal farm. So there has been series, not just here. He has talked about it when we went to Toro sub-region. He talked about people who have grabbed the land there. He has addressed it when he went to Busoga. He talked about people who have grabbed the land in Busoga. He says there is a system and a cabal. And these people, who he calls Museveni's people, come from amongst us. They come from Toro, they come from Lango, they come from... These land grabbers come from everywhere. The difference is that they have created a class or a tribe of themselves, cutting across Ugandans and disorganizing Ugandans. How people chose to understand it is up to them. Thank you, comrade.
And I wanted you I asked you that intentionally because I know that while there could be fears around the speech that Bobi Wine made, I wanted it to be clear to our viewers. There's also the Buganda question, which has actually genuine economic concerns. And also that NUP in its national tour factually was dealing with different questions of different regions. But that said, as you know, our constitution in the preamble gives our history of instability. I would like to bring in my sister, comrade. There are issues, genuine issues in Buganda. There's the land question, there's the urban poor, which are the poorest. I would like to think the poorest Ugandans, because they have no economic cushion. They don't have a village to go to, and a lot of these things. There are genuine issues. But there's also the issue of incitement. You know, we have had the 2010 issue in Kampala here, where people would ask you, Tambula ngo Muganda. I still don't know how to do that. I hope Kateregga will tutor me after here. But there are such issues, and they cause genuine concern for people from, especially other parts of the country living within this region. I know that's not the Uganda we want. What do you have to, what are your reflections on the speech that Honorable Chagulani made in regards to our historical context, where we've had tribal strife?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. I wouldn't really say much regarding the speech because Honorable Kateregga has really mentioned and really cleared out the air on that. But what I'd really like to talk about is the context of our history in terms of where the politics comes from. Because if you're to notice that way back during the regimes, the startings of democracy, the political settings then, you realize how different regions were actually working together. You'd find a young person from the west being sent to study in the north, someone from the north being sent to study here in the central. Like there was that kind of distribution of people, like so that you're able to learn from what the other region does and the other. But then you realize with the emergence of how the political systems are rising and how party systems are now being tagged into the whole tribal conversations, the conflicts, you realize that that system that was introduced then has been scrapped off. And in regards to the way it was actually bringing communities and tribes together, there's no history, given the fact that that was happening. There was nothing in regards to making decisions basing on this region, this tribe, or representation in which office. But then at that point, people were working in unison. But now, given the strikes that are happening in the current systems, where people are basing on the tribal discrimination, your skin color in terms of, actually, I consider us as all blacks. But you realize now, given the context of our country, realize now, you're from the north, you're black. You're from the central, you're brown, you're chocolate. You're from the west, you're brown, you're light. And that is already being entrenched into when you're getting into systems. I may appear in a platform here looking light, and they will just create, like, distinctively tag me as someone from the west. And that would actually like impede the decisions that people are going to make. At the same point, also justifying like the conclusions societies make in terms of your presentations. So you realize that that is actually impeaching a lot on the kind of discussions and the conversations that are happening. That's why you see a case in study of what happened in Luweero, and the discussions, the conversations, the caravans that is happening with National Unity Platform. But if we were to desist from that and only look at ourselves as Ugandans, a country, like a tribe, a citizen, like of one family belonging to the country, then we would really be mitigating some of these issues that are arriving. Like, would actually work in synergies and see how best we can strive to take this country forward rather than focusing on the issues around tribalism. But regardless and despite of that, we do acknowledge that this country has several tribes and every tribe has its strength. And that is also something I'd really say, that the legislations around the economies, what different sectors are doing, should actually be in position to actually boost the economic systems that are happening in different regions. Because I know for a case study, you realize that, for example, in the north, people are into farming. And also there's a small segment, an aspect of people who also do a bit of cattle farming and everything, not for dairy, but maybe for meat production and everything. And that contributes to the meat consumption and production of services around that. And then also you realize that However, they'll do legislations around dairy products. That also implies and affects people in that regions. But then how do we make the policies that accommodate different regions based on what their strength is in terms of economies? And that would be the only way we'd mitigate these kinds of conversations, because in this era, we shouldn't be actually having these conversations around this, but rather working on conversations to strengthen our systems, our political party systems, and seeing the ideologies that move this country forward.
All right. Thank you very much. You bring in a very interesting perspective around the economics of it all, and how, you know, it's important to balance some of these things. But you also dodged my question. So I'll transfer it to Kidega.
I didn't watch that question.
I'll transfer it to Kidega. Kidega, do you think, given our unique history of political turmoil based on sectarianism in the 80s, in 2010, that was responsible for a national leader like Honorable Kyagulanyi to make statements that allude to, you know, tribal sentiment, despite the fact that there are genuine issues, or notwithstanding that there are genuine economic questions?
Thank you very much, Sam. Actually, before I came here this afternoon, I was reading a book by titled "Exploring the Improbable Nation of Indonesia," and they tell you how Sukarno, their independence leader, a very flamboyant young man then, was able to liberate a country that he thought was a nation, but that did not exist, in fact. But even when he took over as its independence leader, he was intentional about forming a nation, because he understood that when you're a nation, so much is possible, all right? And take it back to, bring it to our context here. You look at Tanzania, for example. Today, if you met someone from Tanzania, you wouldn't know if they're a Chaga, a Hehe, a Maasai. You would not know, because Mwalimu Julius Nyerere was intentional about building a nation.
True.
That shows you that, and of course, Luke 13 tells us that to whom much is given, much is expected. So leaders have a responsibility, and they cannot shy away from, to ensure that a nation is constructed into one, irrespective of our very turbulent historical context, which you did allude to, and I'll emphasize it again, is that the preamble of our constitution, the first words therein are that recalling our history that has been characterized by political and constitutional instability.
True.
But therein it goes to emphasize the aspect of peace and unity, right? And the key word for me here is unity, because if you look at the causes of our constitutional and political crisis, the foundation of these were either religious, tribal, or political sentiments. But where leaders capitalize on certain sectarian sentiments to incite and to inspire certain thoughts and views among the people, which is very unfortunate. So hearing Kyagulanyi, Honorable Kyagulanyi, making the statements that he did, saying that, etaka liafe, our land, how can they come here and do all these things? 62 years into independence, where we should be focusing on, it doesn't matter who has settled here in Buganda. Because, this land has ever since, yes, there is the Milo land tenure system, but you know that we have ever since evolved from that kind of thinking. And there are so many non-Buganda who have settled in Buganda and who have contributed to the prosperity of Buganda. So what do you mean when you say that we as Buganda, we have contributed towards this country's development, but we are not getting sufficient in return? What do you mean as a leader? So we must ask these questions, because we cannot say that we want to build a nation, and at the same time we want to advance small national interests. And you see, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Uganda is a multi-nation state. There are many nations within the same state. But to me, that should not be a hindrance towards a possible future that we can imagine as a country. All right? So the statements to me were very unfortunate. And to me, it depicts the political and ideological bankruptcy of the NUP, and how unprepared they are to offer this country what it deserves. All right? Because again, it goes back to what I was saying, that you are having a national-wide tour. And like you mentioned it, for the first time, there was a bit of, the country was shocked that, these guys are actually doing this and there's no interruption. So when I think they felt that the reception they were getting was not what they had expected, because even the euphoria that they talk about among the crowds is not very organic. All right? But even if it were, we must be able to distinguish between the musician in Bobi Wine and the NUP leader in Kyagulanyi. Those two are two distinguished characters and individuals. There is a very interesting musician here in Uganda called Alien Skin. Alien Skin held a concert at Freedom City about 3 months ago. Ugandans broke the gate violently to enter and see Alien Skin. So I don't want our colleagues in the NUP to imagine that because some Ugandans have joined them on their rallies to see the musician, that they somehow have popular support. All right? People have come there for different reasons. Some to see the musician, some have and they had hoped that the police would interfere with their rallies so they can build or ride on what they've always done, which is sympathy. But they have been left alone. They have sorry. Their procession has been left uninterrupted. So they felt that they were losing the steam. That is why, as they approached Luweero, as they approached Buganda, they began to shift the message to now try and incite and inspire a different feeling among the people, because they had failed to mobilize them on issues. All right? So as I conclude, I want to, because legal minds have attempted to really try to categorize Kyagulanyi's address into hate speech. And I think that issue has been dealt with in the Supreme Court decision of Charles Onyango-Bo and Andrew Mwenda, whereby, and I will quote the words of Justice Mulenga in this, where he said that at times certain words, however foolish, however dangerous they might appear, is that we must tolerate them.
True.
So however foolish the words of Kyagulanyi were, and dangerous and counter national unity they were, we must take cognizance of Article 29 of the Constitution, which gives them the freedom to speak. But that freedom should not be abused.
But
I think
what is legal might not be right or moral.
That's true. And if you heard Kyagulanyi, he said that I am not here to be politically right. So meaning he knew what he was doing. He cautioned us and said, I am not here to be politically right. So he knew that the things he was going to say were going to antagonize people, and he did so intentionally. So what kind of leader is that?
So in a nutshell, you believe it was irresponsible?
Irresponsible, it was reckless. No leader worth his name should be at the forefront of undermining the unity that we have built, that has been built intentionally over a long period of time. So much blood has been lost, so much sweat has been broken to find us where we are today.
Yes.
Such statements take us 30 years back.
Thank you very much, Comrade Moses. To whom much is given, much is expected. But also, it was an interesting case in South Africa recently when Malema mobilized the whole stadium and was singing Kill the Boer. And it was ruled that is not hate speech.
That is why
that is the law.
That is why I made reference to the words of Justice Mulenga in Charles Onyango-Bo. That words might be made that are foolish, reckless, dangerous, but the liberty to speak must be guaranteed.
Exactly. I would like to bring in Comrade Roy. Comrade Roy, the NUP calls out the government that while for them they're being, scrutinized for a speech, which is generally just words, the regime is actually sectarian in practice. That when you go to different offices, you go to different entities, when you see how the government is run, the economic inequity, among other imbalances that exist, that actually the true sectarians, which is, by the way, crime, according to the Penal Code Act, the true criminals there, therefore, are the regime and not them. What do you have to say about that?
You know, when you go to Mbarara High, there is a signpost that points to where Mbarara High is, and it says 200 meters. If you sit at the signpost, you can't say you are at Mbarara High. You must first walk the 200 meters to go there. I think Bobi Wine and his speech were the signpost that pointed to where Mbarara High is. Now we need to walk there for us to interact with the reality of where the signpost was pointing. Like I allude to the making of the enterprise called Uganda.
Yes, please.
Where indeed various nations were antagonized to create it. Of course, not for the benefit of the Ugandans, who were non-existent, but for a colonial agenda. Buganda was a nation, Toro was a nation, Ankole was a nation. All these were nations with unique languages, with unique cultures, with unique systems of administration. We can discuss who collaborated and who didn't on another day, okay? But these nations were broken down into an administrative area that was called a protectorate, with an overhead called a governor, a colonial governor. At independence, the governor left, and there was a head of state who started staying at the governor's residence. It's what we call State House today. The King's African Rifle, which was the colonial army of subjugation of the people to make sure that colonial enterprise remains, has metamorphosed along the time, and part of which is what we call the Uganda police today. Okay? So what I say is that there was no deliberate effort at independence to come back together as the pre-colonial nations, because these were perhaps not even interested in being part of this idea called Uganda, this criminal enterprise, colonial enterprise called Uganda. They were doing their own things, living their own lives. So there had to be an effort to bring back the nation called Toro, the nation called Ankole, the nation called Busoga, the nation called whatever, and we say, what do you think about now this new arrangement that we are in? Okay?
But Comrade Roy, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I don't think that was the only way, because there was also the Nyerere path of let's forget what was.
No, I mean,
and go to what
let me
Actually,
make my
that is what
case.
I was about to ask you. That are you saying that because there were all these nations that were put together, either forcefully or by their own consensus,
Yes.
are you saying that was detrimental to us?
Yes, that was.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Please, proceed.
It was detrimental. But moving forward from it, we had to build consensus from it. We cannot simply imagine consensus or say, let's forget the path that was taken to create this unfairness. We cannot just wish it away or put it under the carpet. I think the correct thing to do was to sit down on the table as the nations that had been broken to form the enterprise called Uganda, so that we agree on a new arrangement of how to move forward now together as a new nation called Uganda. Not necessarily to say, now these ones have to go away or this or no. But to have a buy-in, to build a new consensus on what Uganda should be in its new form.
So that opportunity was
that
wasted.
opportunity was not perhaps catered for
Yes.
for various reasons, for various things that happened after independence.
Yeah.
But then after which, now we are in the predicament we are in. The Baganda say we don't have a person on the cabinet, perhaps. The Acholi say we have not been represented in the military. The people of Toro say we've not been represented. And there was no agreement on what these representations are going to be. Because then we'd be discussing breach and say, but we agreed that we are going to be this. But now that agreement was never reached. But now moving forward, there are various issues which make or break nations. Okay? And there is so much evidence to show for it. We have just in the neighborhood where over 1 million people were killed, and those sentiments started from a radio talk show. Okay? And so, whereas we must accept ourselves to finally have that discussion and forge a new way, a new path with all these nations that are now Uganda, we must also desist from fronting certain ways of thinking, mostly that could cause hate amongst each other, mostly that could cause havoc in the long run. And the sectarian thinking, the thinking of tribe, the thinking of religion, the thinking of gender-based male chauvinism, and that we must disabuse ourselves of. Whether we have had that discussion or not, some of these issues we must disabuse ourselves of. But also in the making of nations, I partly agree with her. It is hugely economic, hugely economic, because what these conversations are coming out of is economic exclusion generally everywhere.
Yes.
Because if we are deliberate about building an economic base as a country, allowing the private sector to thrive as a country, building basic infrastructure, building strong institutions, then it wouldn't matter who the CEO of which company is, as long as it's doing what it's supposed to do. I wouldn't mind what tribe or what religion Jennifer Moses is, as long as she's performing her duty. But then Jennifer Moses should also not get that job because she's a Muganda. Or Kidega shouldn't get a particular appointment because he's an Acholi. If Kidega is competent and is doing his job competently, no one will quarrel about it. Or if Kidega is incompetent, I don't think he's incompetent because he's a Mutoro. Okay? I don't think Rugumayo is competent because he's a Musoga. Okay? And those can be coalesced around. The country can be built around those issues. And I think bestly the economic path is the way to go regarding the building of a more prosperous future.
Thank you very much, Comrade Roy. You bring in, once again, I think Comrade Winnie started with that.
Yes.
That if we can use the different strengths of different regions to answer some of the economic questions there, and then some of these problems will end up solving themselves. But again, the questions keep being bounced, so I would like to bring it to Comrade Kateregga. There was a defense from the NUP side to rationalize what happened. of course, we have seen what you said, very key that some of this rhetoric, while they may seem like just speeches or words, in Rwanda, they managed to have 1 million people killed in a period of 1 or 2 months, which is, I think, a world record, an unwanted record. But there was an issue raised by the NUP proponents in countering the issue, the sentiments around the country, that actually they are not the ones who are sectarian, that the regime is the one which is sectarian in practice, in lived experience, in economic imbalance. Is that something you agree to?
Thank you, Sam. I wanted to respond to Comrade Kidega, but because he knows inherently, other than defending the system he's trying to, when he sits himself down, he knows he's not being honest in whatever he has said. But regardless,
Be specific about what exactly.
It's coming.
You have to be specific. You don't
said
just
so much also.
So just be specific.
Kindly proceed.
I think whatever I communicated, or whatever I said at the start, is what Comrade Winnie here retaliated. It's what Kidega retaliated on, though he went on into a twist. It's what Rugumayo has been talking about. Economic subjugation, and Kidega alluded to very good reason. For me, I would not want to derive into my focus with, as we are seated here, we come from different regions. We have relationships beyond the show. One time I was with Kidega here in Alebtong. I don't know if he recalls. I got out to buy, I'd forgotten to pack a toothbrush. I got out and went to a shop to buy a toothbrush. Now the lady in the shop didn't know Swahili, didn't know English. I had to go back to invite a colleague who speaks Langi. I intimated it to him how I was offended as a young Ugandan leader. For me, those are real challenges that we need to address. I'm not here to defend Otoko, or to be politically correct, like Bobi Wine said, on whether NUP or Bobi Wine was right in whatever he has said, or Museveni is right in practicing what you accuse Bobi Wine of saying, because those are the realities. We've been calling him out on the leaders of the agencies of this nation, which gives economic advantage at the end of the day, because the government is the biggest spender. We are saying we all contribute to the national basket. Why are you excluding other Ugandans from, it shouldn't be about engendering and ensuring we must be seen. There should be an actually, the way it is, before we go into discussions, there should be a Rugumayo with a Munyangabu and a Mtoro or on the table. No, that is not how it should be. At the end of the day, before we go into where we are currently, this country has been deeply divided. When we've their causes and their duty bearers. If NUP, which largely I can say with that, which has taken the political space, or which took into a political space since 2020, has a duty and responding to Ugandans on such sentiments. How about people who have been dividing this nation, giving advantages to themselves and them people and their people? We all come from somewhere, and that is a reality which Kidega should not run away from. When we get out of here, when he has a Thanksgiving, wherever I go as his friend, when we get out of here, if I have an issue in my political party, he comes to my rescue. And for me, that is the nation I work for. We've worked on a number of issues, and we have, our sentiments. They are underlying. We come from somewhere. Now, we should not be dishonest to the people. It is true that General Museveni has been a proponent. There is a speech that leaked, an audio, when he was addressing the caucus of the parliamentary caucus of the people of Ankole in 2004, which later Major Kazola quoted in his book. And people have been challenging him. He holds the same mind. Now, because he's a major duty, for me, from what I was taught, is that if say the people of Uganda are talking about these sentiments, there are people that should be held liable. They are duty bearers. And if a smaller one, if we begin a fight here, or if Winnie and I began a fight, a physical fight, in reality, if I realize that I am strongest, and I could punch her with all the weight and the might and kick her, if I do not refrain myself and say no, if she slapped me, for example, if I do not refrain myself and say, Winnie, let us stop here. Let us have a meaningful conversation. Please don't do that. It's not decent. If I go on and pounce on her, I may suppress her, but it may not take away whatever we. So for me, whatever my leader said, for me should be an opener for Ugandans to begin having meaningful conversations about this entity, like Rugumayo said. This there is a system that is being fed that is clearly dividing these people. I mean the people of Uganda. We are unfair to each other. The person, if I go back to personalities, Kidega talked about Bobi Wine and then Kyagulanyi as though the two are different entities, and he was trying to belittle him and whatever we were doing. But the person of Kyagulanyi is a married man. He's married to Barbara Itungo, a lady who comes from, another region. We forget, General Museveni in 1980 is on record in 1983 when the BBC was interviewing him in the bush on as to why he had gone to the fight to fight. Do you remember what he said? That he's fighting for economic liberation of the South, of the Southerners of this nation, referring to the Bantu. He was saying at that time that people like Olaa, Kidega were dominating the Southerners. And it is because Ugandans did question what he believed in. He has come, we saw the tenets, things that I do not want to go into.
Yes. We
can question how the LRA war started with all the challenges that have been there. I do not want to go there because it touches sentiments of the people. But these are realities that when we sit down and have honest conversations, we need to arrive and agree that there will be a time when we do not agree. So for me, I do not want to drive into such conversations. For me, we have to force ourselves to draw a way forward. I mean, when we get out of here, or if the intention is to be politically correct, I would have come here and read out, the structure of NUP as it is to demonstrate to you that whatever is being said of us. But we know in our heart of hearts and the way we operate that, and I said it at the start, that Kyagulanyi has been addressing issues based on sub-regions because that is our part, largely our belief. We think Ugandans are being pushed into a system called Uganda on very unfair terms. You understand? Maybe it was not being clear. The other time we were here, and I talked about how the importance of Mira to the people of Toro sub-region. When I mentioned it, there was a colleague here who thought Mira was a joke. You understand? That when he was there, he addressed, how Mira is a source of economic livelihood for the people of Toro. And the colleague said, you are here talking about Mira. Mira is not a national issue because it is not according to where you come from. There are people who survive on Mira and tea in this region, and they contribute taxes. And the more we keep running away from, say, those issues, we are economically disadvantaged. the more we sit here and say that when the past governments were like Comrade Adile was saying that people would be evenly distributed. There would be a national scheme and they would say, you Kidega, you're going to go to Ntale school. You Kateregga, you are going to go to Nyakashura school. You Rugumayo, you are going to be sent to Laibi College. In the past, that was collapsed. Schools, these traditional schools were collapsed, and that is the reality, and it was deliberate. When you go back and see schools that are performing to date, you will be shocked. Partly schools in this region, we don't learn it. That wherever we are talking about good schools, if they're girls' schools, we maybe talk about Namagunga, we talk about Nabisunsa, we talk about Gayaza, and then jump, talk about Mary Hill, talk about... There were other traditional female schools. True. There were other traditional male schools. You are only going to mention the schools in the south or the central region, and then part of the western Uganda. What happened? What happened to so these are
College.
Yes, what happened to Obote Laibi? What happened to all these schools? What happened to Tororo? These are conversations. Whenever if I spoke about them the way we are, we and the conversation is not this, then people or regime apologists like Comrade Kidega was trying to package himself would come out and say Kateregga is being a tribalist, is being a Muganda, and it is not right. For me, I am not here for such a conversation. Rather, I think this nation and the younger people of this nation must, one, I thank God that because Uganda has largely become a metropolitan country, either by advance of technology or by the common challenges that we are facing. Let us force ourselves to go back and look at these, disadvantages that we are faced with. I gave you an example of, yes, as I conclude, of the realities of, largely the people, even here in West and the South, we had farmers and we had people who were animals. I have given you the terms on which the farmers operate. They are highly taxed because coffee largely is the major cash crop in the South. You cannot export coffee. Look at then people who do, who rear animals and give off dairy products. Look at the cars that transport milk. They have ready number plates. They are tax free. Then look at entities, how they tax and make it difficult for. So for me, these are conversations that Ugandans must have, and those conversations, no political sentiments. The people in perhaps I may be advantaged even when I'm in NUP. There are people who are more advantaged in the NRM. There are people who are more advantaged in every political system and whichever religion. Yes. So for me, I think as we get out of here, we need to have everyone is guilty. I initially told you about my grandfather. We've talked about what Chagulanyi said. We've seen what Museveni says and practices. We are all guilty. How do we move forward? These are the issues that Message has been addressing, but because Messages in Chiga, and when he talks about them, is now not being tribal. When Chagulanyi talks about the same issues, then Chagulanyi is being...
Thank you, comrade. And we'll delve deeper into that issue in the second segment. From the first round of questions, I realized that there's a very thin line between the economic questions of Uganda and the tribal sentiments. Perhaps, or most likely, because of Uganda's unique place in Uganda. First of all, we borrowed or imposed, depending on history, then their name. Secondly, it's economic and metropolitan capital of this country, a melting pot. And many melting pots all over the world have the similar dynamics. And we'll be discussing more and more in the second segment. Right now, we are going to take a brief break. Our dear viewers, I hope you're enjoying this conversation. Please share so everyone can be able to engage with this discussion around national building, especially for us young people. Stick with us for the second segment and for more discussion. Thank you.
Rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Yes, welcome back from that brief break. And today we are continuing with the discussion around political parties. Are they a force of unity or are they disuniting Ugandans? In the first segment, we gave historical context from myself, but also my brother Roy delved into that. We talked about different economic questions. My brother Kateregga talked about the genuine economic concerns within Uganda. But I think there was a general agreement that this Uganda is the people, it's you and I, it's the woman down there in the market. And everything that we do, politics is simply vying to be able to have the chance to facilitate a country that works for you, I, and that lady or that boda or that gentleman out there. And we will be continuing this discussion. We will try to raise the level of discussion in this second segment as we discuss further, the issue around political parties. And I would like to start with my comrade, Winnie. Political parties reintroduced in 2005. Of course, they had been removed by Obote. Amin didn't see any use in bringing them back. Museveni asked them to give him some years to reorganize things. And finally, through structured adjustment policies in the 90s, referendum was forced, and we have political parties now. Doesn't mean there was no opposition before. Do you think, we saw, of course, BCJ and Forum for Democratic Change, very strong leaders, especially at the beginning. And now we have National Unity Platform. But it's increasingly, we are seeing more of cults of personalities than what we used to be political parties. Because a political party, as I defined earlier, is supposed to be an agenda, a group of people behind an agenda seeking to take power and facilitate the country towards development using that agenda. But we are seeing more of personality, politics right now. We see MK, an MK movement with an army, in quotes. We see Sigala Kumein, which had a birthday party over the weekend. We see Robert Chagulani, also a strong personality. Do you think we are taking the right direction? Are political parties still relevant in Uganda?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a very heavy question.
But also light.
It's heavy and light, but then I'll just internalize it based on my perspective on
yes,
this.
Please.
So initially, just as you earlier on said, we can't really rule out that there was no political parties back then. There was actually something or someone that people believed in, just that they didn't name it political parties. But then the making of it coming into existence, where people now really reflect and want to have a sense of belonging, is now what people now generally see as a political party. But now, given the status and the facts of political party systems and settings in this country, you realize that different people, given the context of these countries, the regional dynamics and all that, people have different ideologies. And that's why now there comes the groupings of which party I belong to, what their ideology stands for. and the context in which the fact that people have different ideas, people have different visions of what they want for this country, makes them choose which party they want to belong to. But then also, let's not forget the fact that these parties don't just come up like waking up today. It rallies behind a figure, a personality, someone who comes and decides to drive the ride for this party. That's why you see in this current context, when it comes to National Unity Platform, the fact that Bobi Wine came up, he was a figure back then, a musician, an artist, and he brought out a perspective where the context in which young people in the country were frustrated from a lot, and the fact that this person came out as a young person, it gave the young people hope and the zeal. That's why you see very many young people rallied around him. If we're to go in the context of the NRM setting, where their leader is Yoweri Museveni, we realize that however much that there are young people who are currently also rallying under that political system, realize that majority of its followers are actually the elderly, our parents, because they saw how the revolution came into power. It saved them from something, and that's why they subscribe to that party system. So goes for the sake of the Forum for Democratic Change. So realize that these party systems are closely tagged to who leads it. And that is why there's a lot of confusion in terms of a sense of belonging. Today you'll find someone belonging to NOP. Tomorrow you'll realize they've crossed over to NRM. Tomorrow you'll realize they've crossed over to FDC just because of the change in ideologies. Someone cannot have the same mindset often all over. And the fact that given that there are very many young people rising in this country, there are different levels of people's understanding in terms of the hierarchy of what they see for this country. For example, you'll realize that someone who's just joined into this whole political system would just be bandwagon be joined NOP right now.
Yes.
Because they see it is a party that is trending. There's so many young people, there is vibe in there. They'll just get into there. But then as they grow in there, they realize that they believe in something. Their ideology aligns with what this other party stands for. Then they're crossing. So let's understand and accept the fact that people's ideologies change, the visions change, and also that's why there's also flexibility of people crossing over.
Yeah.
But then also, let's not also forget the fact that these party systems come at a very heightened position and a mark where we see that there's a lot of, how can I call it? There's a lot of breakings that are happening. People are breaking away. People are now fighting, given the context that it happens to do with a lot of the party manifestos. People are now fronting.
Do you think the manifestos are being fronted enough?
The manifestos, first of all, the manifestos are being fronted.
Okay, not manifestos, because manifestos are...
The party ideologies.
Yeah, the party ideologies.
The party ideologies are being fronted when it comes to during elections, campaigns, the heightened moment where the communities, the voters want to hear something. So most times the party ideologies are crafted in a way that it feeds into what the society and the voters need. But then in the context of the parties delivering on what the society needs, it doesn't really amount to that. That's why you see when there's another election, there's always a lot of, you didn't deliver on this, you didn't do this, there's a lot of break. That's why you see now we're having a lot of independent people standing on the independent ticket. Not because at a certain point, not because they want, but because probably they promised while in a particular party and they didn't deliver on it, and they don't want to come back subscribing as that.
Or is it because they lost primaries?
That's also it. That's why it comes with a lot of it. But then, let's also not forget that the whole party system gives a sense of belonging to the communities. However, let's also not forget the fact that it also limits the local voters, people in the communities, because most of these party systems are tied to the elite groups. People with the understanding of it, people with money to pay for the party primaries. We've seen scenarios where young people in parties fail to pay for the nomination fees, and they're actually scrapped off. They're not allowed to proceed with the nominations or anything, and that is how the fallout comes. So it's more like an organizing that is prepped for the elite groups who have the money to run for elections. But then where does this place the young people who are in the local communities? Because all these conversations we're having actually if you're to see and sense most of these conversations, it's closely affecting the young people, and it's where now the young people have to rise up and see how best they can articulate situations and like push for the party system.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade Winnie. You said that political parties are bourgeois of bourgeois, indulgence. But I think Kateregga Honorable will disagree that NUP takes a different strategy. And even UID, which is not represented today, but still represented.
Yeah, the strategies are different, and also the individuals that lead them are different. So let's not say that the characters of the people who lead them also influences the party quality.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I would like to bring in Comrade Kidega, now at a national level, which I think we owe to our viewers. We have many questions in this country. We have the Acholi question on land with the Balalo, on land with the Apa. We have the question with Anagago with the Karamoja Rustlers. We have the Karamoja question
with the
With Teso.
We have the Karamoja question with
Teso.
Yes, with Teso, but also climate issues in Karamoja, extreme climate.
The issue of
We have
the Jap and the Itesot.
We have the Jap, Itesot. We have the
Tororo.
there's so many questions.
See why we
That
need
is
to
political,
discuss.
political, but also
Tribal.
if we are going into economic questions all over the country. However, why is it that when they actually say our land is being taken, Twitter doesn't ramp? Or when all these other questions are raised, but once the Baganda say, okay, our land has been taken, or things are unfair for us, everyone is like, oh, tribalism. Why do you think this? That's something that we need to solve.
Sure.
Because what are your reflections on that dynamic?
Thank you, Sam. With some latitude, you will allow me to just make one or two responses.
Yes, please.
You asked a question to my good friend here, Winnie, about political parties.
Yes.
And Winnie made a comment that, the NUP has gone ahead to attract so many young people. I would love to debunk that statement. About 2 weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were trying to unpack the Gabon issue. And I raised the Hans Kelsen theory that legitimatizes revolutionary coups for as long as there's popular support, for as long as that coup is embraced and accepted by the people, and a new legal framework is established where the people accept to be governed by the same. Then this person asked me, but then how do you, in that circumstance, how do you quantify popular support? Is it by the number of people who come to the street to chant when you march from Luweero? How do you quantify popular support? Is it by you seizing UBC and declaring that now you have taken over government? So we had an issue there, and we zeroed down that because we have adopted something called democracy and elective, elective politics, where people cast their vote and represent their views. So if that is the yardstick, that because we cannot determine who is popular and who is not by how many people are on the street, but rather by how many willingly go ahead to cast their vote and in favor of who. If that is the yardstick that we all agree upon, that's the yardstick that my friend Kateregga used to become a Lord Councillor. That's the yardstick he used to become Guild President of Makerere University. Then that yardstick can be applied to what Winnie is saying. That how many young people have gone ahead to vote the NRM vis-a-vis the NUP. The facts are clear. This is res judicata, Sam. That the National Youth Council is one of the examples where young people went ahead to cast their vote at all levels in support of the NRM. All right? There are many other youth-related structures, but also the 18 million voters of 2021, more than 50% of them were young people. And those young people voted for the NRM. So it is wrong to say that the NRM is not attracting young people. We are there. All right?
Yeah.
So that is not right. Two is that Roy made a comment, but he did so sweepingly when he said that he gave a scenario of what happened next door whereby a comment made on a radio caused over 1 million people to die within 2 months. There are many examples like this. You know the Nazi in Germany,
Yes.
and the way they treated the Jews, all right? So countries can be broken down in a split of a second.
True.
So this takes me back to what I was saying. Leaders must stand above certain things. And you know, it is easy, because if you recall, for example, what happened in 2009 when the Kabaka, I think, was stopped from going somewhere, and then there were riots somewhere
In Kampala.
in Kampala. The people who were victims and those who died were not the elite. It is the people who don't have the capacity to read beyond a mere statement and unpack it in an elite, from an elite perspective, who will simply get the panga and cut each other. The elite, you're privileged. You can dissect and say, hey, but no, Bobi Wine said this, but I think he meant this. The ordinary person down there does not have that time, neither does he have that capacity. They will say, oh, these guys are taking our land. Get a panga and slaughter any of them. All right? So we must be very, very conscious. All right? So again, I say that, just to put that to bed, is that those statements were very unfortunate, and they should never be made again.
Yes, please.
Then you
That's
asked
like
me.
what the Chief Justice said recently, and he was
then
saying
you
it
asked
was
me.
fortunate.
Yes,
Sorry?
let's discuss
The comments
the
of the Chief
let's
Justice.
discuss the unique position of Uganda and why it eludes this unique dynamic within the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question of why do you have different nations having struggling over certain issues, like the power question between the Mahdi and the Acholi,
No,
right?
The issue,
and many other issues that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The issue is why is it that when the Acholi, for example, over the weekend there was a march towards Apa, and then
Yes.
there's always been the Balalo question.
But
Who
yes.
are Balalo are also Ugandans? Nobody,
Branding,
in fact, people sympathize with the Acholi. I could say the sentiment is sympathy. But when it comes to Buganda, which also has genuine economic questions, and a large urban poor, which are the poorest Ugandans, why is it that in this case it is seen as tribalistic incitement? Is it historical that Buganda is seen like this? What could be?
The shadow
Yeah.
box to silence.
Thank you, Sam. And you've partly answered my question, because I've been privileged to enter a constitutional history class. And I know that the way Uganda was formed, Buganda played a very instrumental role. Buganda, if you recall, was opposed to the idea of being part of Uganda. You may recall in 1953, when Mutesa then was summoned to London, because he was resisting the idea that Uganda should be one nation.
True.
You may recall that Mutesa then challenged the colonial powers that Buganda should be moved from under this secretary. Okay, at the height of the discussion of how do we integrate Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Buganda was opposed to that idea. All right. So, and even today we still hear sentiments of federal. You know, they want to have their own sort of administration, and they want to be self-governing, which ideally I find no issue with. All right, because but does that advancement, does that analogy foster national unity? I think that devolution, decentralization can work in states that have achieved some level of emancipation across the country. But a nation where you have places like Karamoja that can barely feed themselves, it is selfish right now to begin to advance an argument of we want to be independent. Yet you know that majority of the taxes, in fact, come from within the central region. So if the taxes that we collect from within the central region are first of all going to be used to develop that particular region, then what happens to the other parts of the country? All right? So I think, whereas it is not a bad idea, it is premature. we need to reach a level where you have a nation that is empowered, whereby even if you say, okay, we want federal for the Acholi can within themselves be able to emancipate and develop. So there is a historical connotation, like you mentioned, and like I've given you, that Buganda has always seen itself as a first-class group of people. And this is in all honesty. Yeah? Is that you may recall even our independence constitution, 1962. The Buganda king then wanted to be the head of state. And you may recall the issues later on of lost counties, you know, the Toro lost, is it? Bunyoro. All right? So the historical context is so enriching for you to understand and appreciate that Buganda has always seen itself as a first-class group of people. And perhaps rightly so, because they were the gate through which the colonial powers came, and they were the gate because they were an organized group of people. They had proper systems of administration, they had systems of justice. So the colonial power found it easy to deal with them because they were organized, and later on used them to eventually colonize
Everyone else.
and to establish the protectorate. I'm telling sit there and allow me to educate you.
No,
Okay?
we
Just
cannot allow you
stay
to
put. I'm giving you historical context, which are facts.
from your perspective.
No,
I want to give you
they are
this
facts.
as well.
we will.
I'm telling you.
We'll get there.
So you can see all these things, all right? That you recall even at some point, Buganda ordered the federal government out of Buganda. The Luchiko that started in 1965, that said that the central government must leave our land. And that is why Amin and his group ended up raiding Bulange and the Kabaka Flee. Very unfortunate incidents that had very strong tribal connotations attached to them. So the point is that I am an Acholi, but that should not be who I am first. I am a Ugandan. I am an African. That's why the NRM ideology is nationalism, Pan-Africanism.
Thank you.
Let us have a united Africa.
Yes.
Let us have one nation, one country
In
called
what terms?
one nation. You see, I think you're saying
No,
KJ's. No.
Yes.
KJ's emphasis is on what terms.
Yes.
No,
You see, because the terms that he says are that what do they deserve? What should they get?
I
Right?
think,
Which is wrong.
I think KJ deserves a
Are those
chance to
are
answer
those the
that,
terms
and I
that
will give it.
KJ is asking about? On what terms?
No,
Yes, no, I think he'll give it
Let him
context.
unpack
And
that.
let me get to Comrade Roy, because I want you to discuss that issue
colleagues.
as in depth. I don't want it to be a
This one
replay.
is being intellectually dishonest.
But
No,
I
mean,
mean, what
let's
terms? What
but
terms? Tell
he's
us.
discussing.
When
I
you
mean,
say
that's-
Some
what
has
terms?
barred me from
What terms?
responding.
No,
yeah,
Sam,
I'm going to.
Sam,
He's going
allow
to
him to respond to the issue of
because
terms.
his next question will actually be issues around whether NUP is advancing federal or is it advancing a different ideology? Because I think that is, if the framework is clear, then but we'll get there. I wanted to first discuss. Get Comrade Roy's opinion. Comrade Roy.
Yes.
Kidega was bringing a historical perspective, and one of the most honorable things we can do as young people is actually to study Uganda's history, even before 1894.
Yeah.
Buganda is an interesting case, of course, over 700 years. If you read the old history of Buganda, you find people like Bemba Musota, who was actually not a Muganda. He was the son of a Mchwezi warrior. That is the 13th century. Then we have different flows of different waves that have been coming into Buganda. We have the Babito, then we have the Bachwezi. If you remember your history, that Buganda was always within the map of those areas. We have even Buganda itself expanding to take over wider areas, starting from the 3 counties. We had the wave of the Babito, we had Bunyoro Kutara, where Buganda was among. Then we finally, 700 years later, the British. Then post-independence, the wave of the Acholi. We now have Acholi quarters. we have all these things. Don't you think that it is this diversity that makes Buganda stronger than a very strong region? And as Ugandans, that we should start embracing diversity as a strength.
Maybe what you forget is that it has always been welcoming. That's why we have people like Daudi Ochengi, where I come from.
Yes.
Who was our first legislator. He was a natural from Mityana here.
So the question being, isn't diversity something that the young people of this country need to start embracing? But also, how can we teach them this? Because we know that tribalism is a survival mechanism. It's a very basic emotion of protecting for oneself.
You know, for me to be a good Ugandan, I must not cease to be a good Mutoro. Or for Kidega to be a Ugandan or an African, he must not first throw away his being an Acholi. Okay? It is beautiful for him to be an Acholi, for him to have values of an Acholi man, and be brought up as an Acholi man. It's okay.
Yes.
As long as he's being an Acholi, he doesn't use it to disadvantage my being a Mutoro. Or for me to use my being a Mchiga to disadvantage his being a Mufumbira, take for instance. Those diversities are a strength. They are what make us unique and what make us truly African. Now, the major issue are the production relations, I think.
True.
That we are not creating wealth. Because if we were, I wouldn't mind what tribe Kateregga is as long as he's buying my matoke. I wouldn't mind what religion Olaa is as long as he's sufficient market for my milk. But also, I must not get advantage for my milk over Kateregga's fish. Okay? So Kateregga must be able to make good profit, access good market for his fish, just like Olaa is for his beef. Then those kind of interconnectedness, that kind of growth together, providing essential things for each other, is what makes the diversity first beautiful and makes us grow as a nation and as a people. I think that there are three groups of people that we need to fight and successfully defeat. One, those are the uninformed, ignorance. Okay? The uninformed usually spread disinformation and misinformation. And that can be very dangerous to society as a whole. Now, when we have the correct kind of information being shared around about socio-economic transformation, about issues that the country can actually be rallied around, then we are heading far ahead as a country. And that Mzee Julius Nyerere did. He built an education system, both formal and informal, to fight and defeat the disinformation, misinformation, and that's why we have a nation called Tanzania, where you cannot name which tribes or which, because that group of the uninformed was perfectly defeated. Now, the second group are the parasites, the people who are simply eating, who are simply enjoying resources without actually creating. Creating wealth. Wealth must be created. That's where we come to work. to industrialization,
Yes.
to value addition. Okay? Comrade Kateregga talked about coffee. You know, a kilogram of coffee could be around $3. When we sell it out of the country, maybe to the UK, we shall buy it well processed at $15. Now we have donated $12 to the UK. But also on top of the $12 that we have donated, we have also given them very good processing jobs for their people. We've created jobs for their people, and along that, given them $12. I think those should be the issues. How do we add value to Kateregga's coffee so that he gets $15 from 1 kilogram of coffee? And if that is the message that Kateregga is giving out, because there is no value, there is no wealth creation, the only message Kateregga can give out is rallying people alongside a tribe or a religion. If we had built industries and gone ahead to build cooperatives and people get real value for their money, what Kateregga would be rallying people about is that they are not having good paying jobs, that they are not having good value for coffee. Okay, but that is not there. Okay, now the third group that has to be fought and defeated are the agents of foreign interests. Okay, those divide and subdivide our people along very parochial lines, along religious, along tribal, along gender issues. These were not the case. I mean, we have people just across the border that we have leaders here in Kenya who have cousins here in Uganda. We have people in Toro who have clansmates just across the border in Congo. I mean, but also the historical linkages within our people. In Toro, take for instance where I come from, we cannot crown the king without a Luo. Elders from Acholi and the Luo region have to come for our function to be there. If they don't come, we cannot crown a king because we are part of the Luo Bito dynasty. Also in Buganda, there are very huge historical linkages across Uganda. For us, the straw with which we take the local brew is called Oruseke. The Baganda have Akaseke. For the Acholi, I don't know what you call it. Cheke.
We don't drink.
I mean, very, very many historical linkages. The Wankachi, where the king enters through, it has a history with the Acholi. It's an Acholi word to mean something.
Yes.
Okay, so we are not very disconnected. Okay, we are one people.
They're just ignorant.
And that's why we need to fight the misinformed or the uninformed. Okay, so our people are so connected, and we must build along those connectednesses to have a country that works for all of us.
Yes.
You know, I am very confident that if we had a social service structure that works for all of us, these sentiments wouldn't rise. If we had an education system that gives opportunity to all of us, it wouldn't matter. I mean, these issues wouldn't matter. So, and if we had our production relations to grow to superior tools and superior modes of production and survival, the tribe would naturally die out. And our engagements on politics would be hinged on issues. But when you look at all these political parties, where they differ they do not have a huge difference in, okay, their contestation is not on ideological divergence. Okay? We do not have this one saying our proposed mode of production is this, as opposed to your proposed mode of production. Our understanding, yes, our understanding of the market is this, as opposed to your understanding of the market. Our understanding of, you get. So these production relations are what would determine good politics. So for when they are non-existent, that's why you find us rallying people alongside, these are Catholics, these are Muslims.
So do you think, do you see, you've been a bit neutral, so you're the right person to ask. Do you think these elements exist across almost all political parties, including the ruling party? The ignorant, the parasites, and the question around, foreign, still parasites. You had another word, but yeah. Do you see this? Do you see this as a cross-cutting issue across all political parties?
Yeah, it is. It is a cross-cutting issue, and I agree with all these colleagues that we must build a movement beyond NUP, beyond NRM, beyond UID, whatever, so that a new breed of understanding of these issues can be built. Because I believe that beyond the election, there should be Ugandanness, okay? And those major definitive aspects that make us Ugandan, other than NRM, that make us Ugandans other than NUP. There is something that was called a generational consensus on progress. We must have that. That whether you're NRM, whether you are what, you believe that the father of the nation is Mzee Julius Nyerere. Whether you're Chama cha Mapinduzi or whatever. And you can disagree on any other thing, but okay.
Thank you, comrade.
Yes.
Yeah. You bring very important context, which I'm sure the viewers will enjoy, and still goes back to the issue of political design, because I think that's something that Uganda missed a chance to do, to design politics that accommodates diversity and all these things. We've largely grew based on sentiments, and that's why I want to bring in Comrade Kateregga. Comrade, it is very clear that people understand. I mean, it's very important that people understand NUP's national message clearly. I think from the last two debates we have had here, it is clear that NUP has been going around the country, by the way, discussing questions of the different regions. But I think without a national message that people can understand in one go, like maybe a nationalistic approach or federal, it then gets confusing.
Just a few seconds to chip in. You see the EFF, when you look at the EFF, you know, economic freedom in our lifetime, and their issues are nationalization of mines and banks, reparations without
compensation,
taking back land without compensation. Three issues.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think what we're having, if I could chip, and I want you to clarify, is NUP has been going around the country, talk about Mira, this in Acholi, this here and there. But of course, like Kidega said, there are disparities. There's even no social media much in some of those places. But once you come to Buganda and state Buganda issues, it is bound, by way of being a developed area with people online, it is bound to cause chaos. But if the message is clear, that you're discussing with Buganda issues within a federal context, then the other people are like, okay, so what does he have to say about Acholi? What does he have to say? So I think there's that lack of clarity, and we want to understand from you whether we have not had it or it's just a packaging issue, because now the people are saying, oh, NUP is a Buganda party. Yet in actual sense, you've been transversing the country with a diverse team, including my brother Yeki, discussing problems of different areas. Yeah, that is something that maybe you can clarify for the viewers, because I'm sure At your size, you should have discussed this.
Thank you so much. The message of the National Unity Platform is very clear.
First of all, is it federal or not? Because you need to know.
Our message is largely, when we took over the party, we had to even change the name to reflect exactly what we are talking about. Well, the name National Unity Platform, the intentions of the National Unity Platform are much represented, beginning with the naming, with the nomenclature of the party. Well, our message has been clear to the people. We are saying, let us not shy away from who we are. We are saying, for Uganda to metamorphose into a nation, Ugandans must first go back, discuss, amongst themselves, agree, treat themselves as worthy citizens. A good example that our leader usually uses, he says his best friend, Ali Buken, Nubianeli, is a Nubian from the West Nile, and his wife, his other best friend, his better part, is from the western part of the country, and he comes from the central, and these are not decisions that he took for political reasons also, because then he was not an active politician when he chose his wife, when he chose Nubian Leaf, a best friend, and what. When we talk internally, he's been encouraging us to to break these barriers. That is not why so our message has been very clear. We think that the issues of the people of Uganda in these small sects are the issues that are supposed to inform national issues.
But do you think they're supposed to be, are they issues along tribal lines, or they're issues along class lines, like my brother Roy tried to bring out?
If now that is because we are not the major duty bearers in as much as we are. If you've been talking about the question of Balalo grabbing land in Acholi, grabbing land in Karamoja, they've grabbed the land here. Everyone is crying about them. And I talked about, for example, not a conspiracy theory, but the reality of the cattle corridors, where the central government moves in and says, we are running a disarmament policy. We are disarming the Karamajong, we are disarming the Itesot, and we are arming the Balalo. Because they are armed. That is a reality. You've experienced it. We are saying we should not shy away from these realities. Let us confront these realities as they come, so that we agree on how to move forward. In the National Unity Platform, for example, Kyagulanyi, and maybe many of us come from here. Lubongoya, the Sasi Marvins, the Benjamin Katanas, and many of them come from the West. You've talked about Oyeki, Gerard, Lina Zedriga, and many of them we come there and chorus, and we do not internally like any other system. I mean, when you sit, when Chelega will tell you that oftentimes when they sit as NYC, you do not have to agree. But what is clear about us is that we think this nation should build national consensus. That national consensus has to start from somewhere. One of the outstanding reasons for the people of Uganda is economic subjugation, where the people of Uganda are being sidelined. If for example, I, Kateregga, come out to talk about economic subjugation as a political leader for my people, Kidega comes out and says we are economically disadvantaged and this away. Rugumayo comes out and says, you see, the land in Bunyangabo has been, he knows the issues of Bunyangabo, which we've discussed between the Banyangabo, the Batoro, particularly the Banyangabo, the Batoro, and the Banyangabo, the Bachiga in Bunyangabo. You understand? Until we have addressed those issues here in Uganda, for you address us as Baganda. You do not know that they are, for example, the Baganda in Singo, who are largely mixed, where I come from, in Mtiana. The Baganda in Masaka, we are different. We at the personal, at that level, we have issues, but which I may say, we actively addressed. You understand? Why are we running away from issues? Let us address these issues actively. Let us face the music as it comes, so that we move. He likes one of the people, Comrade Rugumayo mentions, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, one of the greats who I identify with, or who I recognize as an idol, made it very clear that a nation cannot be built if we focus on trivial issues. But he did not, I mean, when he did that, it was just. When they applied the Ujamaa, it disadvantaged the people of Tanzania. It is true. But that disadvantage went to every Tanzanian at that time. You understand? When Mwalimu was leaving as president, he came out and apologized to the people of Tanzania. I am sorry, but every Tanzanian had faced the challenges.
We don't even know his tribe.
We don't. We forget he comes from a small tribe towards the border here. I even forget what name it is. But the people of Tanzania, including the people of Zanzibar, the fight they had with Abedi Karume, the people in Zanzibar, one time were in Zanzibar, and the locals. No, before we go into, I'm talking about Abedi Karume, the one of Zanzibar. Yes, and the people there were telling us what they think happened for Zanzibar to be merged. That agreement that Mwalimu and Abedi Karume, then who became his vice president and president of Zanzibar, signed. These people took meaningful, national, they made national sacrifice to make sure that their country is coalesced into one. We've had leaders, we've listed on some of the challenges. I have mentioned one of the challenges, which is lack of a national language. Just the other day, people were killed in Kasese. When you moved around, there was no recognition. You get? Is it because the people of Kasese, are fewer, they're not occupying important positions? If the same thing that happened in Kasese, and for example happened in Gulu, it would be a national issue. Because the Acholi can make a noise for themselves. You understand? If they do not, then the Chief Justice will come out and say, which is unfortunate, he will say you are not paying attention to us, and people will accuse him of being a tribalist. You understand? If it happened here, then it would be a national issue. You understand? So this nation lacks a backbone. One of the tenets as to why we don't have a backbone, we do not feel each other's pain, is because it has been structured. There are people who are responsible. Kidega, the system that you represent here, has been in charge of this country for the past 40 years.
Yes.
It is ought to have addressed some of these challenges. Bobi Wine is only but 41 years. You get? He is directly a product of the behavior of the NRM. Comrade Olaa,
Yes.
And the colleagues here, we've been trying to stretch and to the young people and ourselves. Let us not run away from the challenges that are before us. I think the right thing to do for the younger people of this nation, especially you who is politically active, is to go back, read, inform yourself, learn about this nation, what we have gone through, observe what the community is going through. Let us face these challenges as they have been put before us. We are here, the colonialists came here in the late 1800s, forced us into this venue. Was a company for them called Uganda. We must put our backs to make sure that we force ourselves to make, one, build Uganda into a nation, two, force Uganda to work for every citizen, and three, make sure that every citizen of this country feels a citizen who is not participated. And to the youth out there, get to participate in the affairs of your nation, or else be ready to be participated.
Yeah, thank you very much. Comrade Kateregga, it was such a pleasure having you today. Let's have parting remarks from Comrade Winnie. Not parting, but
Okay.
adjourning remarks.
Thank you very much. Your statements of get ready to be participated actually triggers something. But then my statements to the young people out there is acquaint yourself with the information, as well as the information on the country's history, because it will inform a lot of the decisions we're making, and it will at least help mitigate the level of ignorance that makes us make certain statements and decisions that actually in the end would trigger a lot of violence in the communities. So acquaint yourself with information and also get involved in the party, in the political systems and structures in your community, because a decision can't be made wholeheartedly without your involvement as a young people. No matter the level, just get involved.
Yeah, thank you very much. Comrade Kidega.
Yeah, Sam, thank you for having me this afternoon. my adjourning shots, as you've called them, is that the nation Uganda is possible.
Yes.
There is nothing wrong with, there is no offense, there is no criminality with you being a Muganda. There is no offense with you being a Munyoro, an Acholi, whatever tribe it is okay. It is very okay. All right. But even in that association, we must bear in mind that there's a country called Uganda that we have to build. Because even in our small national groupings, we have certain strengths that we can capitalize on to make this country better. So I am not opposed to the idea that people should identify with their tribes. That's very okay, for as long as this does not come into the in the way of a bigger picture of the nation called Uganda. All right, and two, even when people think that Buganda wants to emphasize its dominance, even when I don't want to blame the colonialists, I think that the colonial powers, with the way they came to Uganda and with the way they penetrated through Buganda, is that kind of association elevated Uganda naturally. And they don't owe us an apology. All right? It is okay for them to be superior. It is okay for them to have all these strengths. There is no issue with that. But can we capitalize on that strength to build a bigger nation? Can we capitalize on the strength that they actually have to build a strong nation called Uganda?
Yes.
To me, I think that should be the yardstick that we must capitalize on and bench on.
Yes.
Lastly, to the youth out there, is that Uganda is here to stay, and this is our country. It's all we have. All right. So, as leaders, as you go out there to preach your message, are you unifying the country, or are you dividing the country?
Yes.
I think that I will end with the words of the late Desmond Tutu, that in whatever you do, just do right. Yeah. Whether consciously or subconsciously, just do right. Eventually, that right will overwhelm the small pockets of wrongs. And two wrongs not make a right. If the Museveni regime or the NRM are being accused of being sectarian in their practice, does that then give you the latitude to also do the same? I think two wrongs don't make a right. If they've been doing so, then we should criticize them.
Yes.
And say, this is wrong, you should not do this, but we shouldn't use that to justify our own actions as well. All right?
Thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kidega, and for the work you always do elevating youth voices. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. Comrade Roy Rugumayo.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I believe that for us to move forward better,
Yes.
we need to deliberately fight and defeat three groups. The uninformed, the parasites, and the agents of foreign interests.
Yes.
And that can be done in a conscious movement of Africans, of East Africans, of Ugandans, beyond their political affiliations, beyond their religious affiliations, beyond their tribes, beyond whatever lines could or have been drawn to divide us. Because indeed, we stand a chance when we are together and better.
Yes.
The colonialists found it very easy to take over Africa because our chiefs, our kings then were more interested in their small dominions than in building empire and being more visionary. Lastly, I think a more broad-based approach to our issues and towards solving our issues will have us stand a chance better as a country. Broad-based in our education, that regardless of whatever tribe people are, they must access this education and it must benefit all of them. Broad-based. In our politics, we must be broad-based. In the jobs that currently exist, no matter how few they are, it must be broad-based for the enjoyment of everyone in all our diversities. Okay? In health, it must be broad-based for everyone.
Yes.
And then we can stand a better chance as a country. Indeed, I believe we have a chance.
Yes.
We have a chance, and that chance can be brought by the execution of our mandate towards a prosperous country.
Yes. Thank you very much, Comrade Rugumayo, right there. It has been very interesting for me as well. A few takes just I would like to appreciate you for. Of course, you've just reiterated that we need to fight the uninformed, the parasites, and the agents of foreign interest. From Comrade Kidega, that to whom much is given, much is expected. And not all that is legal or is moral or right. And therefore, as leaders, you have to take that extra step to do what is right, even beyond the books. Comrade Winnie there talked about issues around economic emancipation, which Rugumayo later also expanded on. That is, many of these issues are economic in nature, and we need to deal with them. And once that is solved in a balanced way, broad-based way, we have a better country. And finally, from Comrade Kateregga, which is something that we also all need to take, is that we need to confront issues. We need to confront issues. On how we confront them, we can debate, but the issues must be confronted, and the earlier we do it, the better. And to our dear viewers, thank you very much for sticking with us. Unlike Comrade Kidega, who ended with a very inspirational figure, I will end with a rather uninspirational one. In the words of Ali Bongo.
Make noise.
Please, make noise. Make informed noise. Yeah, thank you very much.